well, here we are again. It's always such a pleasure. I'm gonna come clean. I have no idea what to make of this game. Shadow Tower. Gameplay-wise, it takes 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Plot-wise, it's an incoherent mess, and through it all lies one of the most creepiest and nail-biting horror experiences you can ever have. Not only that, but combine a lack of information with a few technical problems, this game was one of the more complicated ones to make. It's gonna be a weird one, folks. Strap yourselves in. So after the dual laser cannon blasts of Armored Core and Armored Core Project Phantasma, essentially being a little experiment that well and truly paid off, From Software went back to their dungeon crawling roots. But apparently they wanted to make a whole new franchise. So for now, Kingsfield is thrown in the dumpster. And also notable on this game is that ASCII Entertainment has been dropped and now H-Tech is in, a company that From Software would get pretty buddy-buddy with for a good chunk of the PS2's life. And they wouldn't stop until the DS port of The Adventures of Cookies and Cream. And that's really all the pre-release stuff I can find on it. I mean, for hell's sake, the game doesn't even have its own TV tropes article, and its article on Wikipedia is threadbare. I have nothing to prepare me for the horrors that lie ahead. Not really. See, this was the very first From Software game maybe I ever played. It's time for either that or Evergrace. I played this game on a demo at my friend's house years ago, and as you can expect, I got my ass handed to me. Who the hell pushes the attack button on triangle button? What kind of useless garbage? Anyways, young me was more interested in some other demos, so I never got to see it again. But I always remembered it in the back of my mind, and when Kingsfield was brought to my attention as a wee teen, I distinctly remember it looking like that one weird game I played as a kid. And that's ultimately what started me on this journey. For me, we've come full circle now, a true, legendary story. That's the stuff of legend. Anyways, it's finally time to start this game up. Once again, I'm using mouse-injected dolphin duck, so keep that in mind as I'm using keyboard and mouse. We get another CGI intro, but this one tells us really nothing. Just some King's Knight looking dude fighting a bunch of monsters to an Arabian sounding song. Then there's the main menu with a much creepier main theme and a man who looks like he's getting attacked by a facehugger. Alrighty, things seem good. So we dropped in and there's instant confusion. You get about 6 lines of text written like a fairy tale about a tower that seemingly unleashed a darkness that swallowed Zepta? What are you talking about? Where are we? Why is the tower destroyed? Who's darkness? You named it like a proper noun. Why did a warrior come forth? Who's this dickwad? Who am I? Where am I? Where's the tower? We're going up, not down. What the hell is even going on? Some of this will get answers, but I have to save the plot for the very last. It's one of my biggest complaints about the game. But let's talk about this first screen and what the game is trying to teach you that's different from anything you've played thus far. First off, you are dropped into the most hostile first area in FromSoft history. If you press any direction other than forward or back, you're probably going to die. You start on a staircase that is definitely not OSHA certified, because there are no railings, and yes, falling is instant death as per FromSoft norm. Trying to go up will have Diabolus himself decide you're trapped, so your only option is to march on in. Now, there's a few things you'll notice right off the bat. First, if you play Kingsfield 2 and 3, your sprint button has been taken away. Second off, you start with a pretty healthy reserve of health and magic, like endgame Kingsfield stats. This is not a good sign. Next, stop, collaborate, and listen. There's absolutely nothing in the air. There's no music. For the entirety of the gameplay, you will not hear an ounce of song that isn't diegetic, which is extremely rare. Sometimes there'll be some ambience or distant monster cries, but other than that, it's a pretty lonely game. What's strange is that Wikipedia claims there was an entire OST made for the game that just went completely unused. Some of the tracks were later used in Evergrace. Why are the 2 FromSoft games I played as a kid having a connection? I heard somewhere along the grapevine that this was used as a trade-off for full voice acting, which is strange because, like most FromSoft RPGs, dialogue is uncommon to outright rare, and Armored Core showed that you can have both a wide selection of music, environments, and voice acting. So they absolutely could have had their cake and ate it too. Admittedly, the only game I could think of before this that had a ton of voice acting was something like Resident Evil 1 or Twisted Metal 2, but even still, this had to have been done by choice and not necessity. Now, as for the main crux of gameplay, it's pretty similar to Kingsfield. You walk around, collect items, try to find new equipment, kill monsters, and find secrets. You have delayed attacks, enemies give off some nice, almost visceral feedback this time, and the combat ranges from merely punishing but fair to downright sadistic at points. Nothing new from FromSoft there. The only improvement on the main combat front now is that you're given damage numbers to know exactly what you are or are not doing. Thank you, Softy. But that's the main crux of the gameplay that was brought over. You're gonna notice a few quirks, like how healing potions seemingly heal everything all at once, how rarely some things are given out, and how your equipment seemingly has durability. And the enemies are pretty damn creepy, and that's when it hits you. No music, limited resources, punishing combat, creepy enemy designs? You're in a survival horror game. Hey, yep, welcome to From Software's first attempt to actually, no joke, for realsies scare the daylights out of you. The effectiveness is a bit of a mixed bag with some low lows but some terrifying highs. And the most mixed are the graphics. Now when it comes to environmental detail, this is the worst game in the catalog aside from the very first Kingsfield, which had the excuse of being made on a budget fit for the dollar menu. When I commented on the graphics for that game, I believe I said something along the lines of, every area has its own dedicated texture to differentiate it, but it will have only that one texture. While it's nowhere near that bad, the sentiment does come back with a vengeance in this game. Now, there are more environmental props, set pieces, and just general things in this game than even Kingsfield 3, but you will be seeing a similar color palette for an entire world, if not an entire level. It's not that the game lacks color, it's just that it's used a little too sparingly. Having the entire map be blanketed on a crushing fog doesn't help. There's no map at all, meaning navigation is a mess. Not only that, but the colors that are there are spread way too thin. This game has a serious love for the colors brown and sickly yellow. The dearth of color hurts because they're somehow separate worlds, though I suppose it would clash with the horror atmosphere and the horrific monsters. Not gonna lie guys, this game has some of the freakiest monster designs of all time. FromSoft took normal fantasy characters and placed a wicked design team on them. Jesus Cristo. Even something as simple as a skeleton has this unnatural shifting to it, like it's actually a bundle of bones being puppeteered by dark magic and not actually living. Would you think, yeah, no shit, Sherlock. But most games don't give me this kind of uncanny feeling. Half the time I was running through the game and I just came across monsters and froze for a second like, safe to say then, when it comes to horrific designs, the game absolutely nails them. The audio manages to stay fairly well done across the board. Since the game is whisper quiet, you're going to hear your death coming long before you see it. A lot of them are skin trembling. It got to the point that I was mistaking the noises of doors closing for hidden monsters that I could not for the life of me fucking find. However, this does mean that when there's no monsters, the sound design is functionally dead air without the ambient sounds or music, which is pretty bad in your long-haul dungeon crawler. You need something. Now, with some good monster designs, there has to be some good gameplay to back it up as well. There are some major mix-ups, some 50-50s, and a few fighting game terms I can't remember, a few frame datas, I don't remember. First things first is indeed all your equipment from armor to weapons to even magic rings are subject to durability, with the exceptions being amulets and bracelets. The damage system is obvious. With offensive items, the more you use them, the closer they are to busting. With armor and shields, the more you get hit, the more they start to break and leave you in your skivvies. A quick note on shields: unlike Kingsfield, shields are an item that you have to use in your offhand to actually reduce damage. Pretty neat, huh? You can lower the durability so far you outright break equipment, rendering it functionally useless for the time being. You can repair items with a rare consumable that will only give you a few points at most, or wait for a certain shop, but the shop system needs its own explanation. There does seem to be a bit of a triangle going on here. I think, don't know, that using the wrong type of weapon on certain enemies or getting hit with certain attacks drains durability faster. You only get a notification when the equipment nears destruction, so you have to manually keep an eye on that, again making choosing what weapon for the job a very important part of your overall kit. Speaking of, however, another important part of your kit is that you're allowed a backup weapon, a backup shield, and 2 sets of magic. And to activate all of that, you have to punch in a button combo like you're playing a fighting game. But it allows you to adjust to the situation on the fly, meaning you're not caught with your pants down as often. Also, a word on magic. You need to find magic rings before you're allowed to cast any magic, and even that runs off durability. Ditto ranged weapons. And the conversion rate is usually 1 shot per 1 durability, so somehow in a game with dungeons and swords, we have limited ammo and a mana system. Not so sure how I feel about this mix-up. On the one hand, it does feel very similar to how Dark Souls would later handle both ideas, but the durability issue is definitely closer to Dark Souls 2 than 1. Sometimes in a pitched battle, I would be switching to my backup at just the right moment before death befell me. Sometimes I was dealing with all my good weapons being broken and poking enemies with nothing but a stick just to scrape by. In tandem with these new items, there's a weight system, but this one's straight from the later games since it's only what you currently have equipped that has weight, not what you have in total. Speaking of your inventory, you'll be picking up a lot of health potions, and magic potions are also a rare commodity. Now, unlike most games I can think of, all potions refill their respective meters to 100% instantly, no questions asked. This means the closer you are to death or being out of magic, the more valuable one of the potions will be. And believe it or not, later on, your health is a currency, so you need to ration it more than usual. Also, something to keep in note is that there's no ability to resurrect in this game. In Kingsfield, you can use Dragon Tree Fruit to avoid death. Here, die and it's to the main menu for you. The only other currency you'll find is an uncommon tablet called a soon, because I refuse to pronounce it the other way and risk being called a racist. The last thing to talk about the general moment-to-moment gameplay is the experience system. Unlike most RPGs where you leveled up and all your stats take a small little jump, Shadow Tower has no levels or anything of the sort. I'm kind of confused on exactly what goes on, but from what I've gathered, the more you kill enemies, the more SP you gain. The more SP you have, the more your stats raised, and it kinda seems like it depends on what enemies you kill raises your stats. Not only that, but they're all directly influenced by equipment, and figuring out what each stat can do takes some time. Like, strength isn't how hard you're hitting things, but how much HP you have. You want to take matters into your own wise hands, so you can get your hands on these SP pods and fill your stats that way. By the end of the game, I know I had to have done something right, because if I lost about half my HP, passive healing kicked in. The only other big element I can think of that's been changed that I can recall is the shop system. Instead of one shop where you can do everything, there's instead 4 different shops that all do different things, all accepting a different currency, forcing you to master the adventurer's economy. There's a traditional shop that sells unlimited amounts of normal items and then just a few specialty items for shoons. The next 2 shops do generally the same thing, just give you different items. Essentially, you can give up your equipment for free HP and MP potions. This is a very useful tool to fight off clutter in your inventory or get rid of items that you have no intention of using. Although be careful, young adventurer, since if you give away a really cool item by accident, you are not getting it back no matter how much you beg, scream, or yell. Finally, the last shop is a smithy that'll fix up all of your weapons for your own actual HP. You can't actually kill yourself using this method, but you can leave yourself on death's door. This makes your HP a consumable resource as much as any other currency, and since you will need a good weapon and then multiple backup weapons on hand, keeping a healthy stock of health potions is a must. The smithy only appears about once per floor, so they're an incredibly rare commodity. Given the game's extremely linear nature, there may be long stretches of gameplay, like the entirety of the Fire World, where you will not have the ability to repair your items unless you use the very rare Dorando's Ashes. So Soons buy you a lot and also not much. Items can be used to buy you health and mana, and health can be used to repair your weapons. It does give the game a sort of natural balance. Balancing the amount of backup gear in your inventory versus how much health and mana you want is key to making your journey through the tower not outright insanity. It's not too terribly hard to get yourself a large amount of potions of both types, but it's also too easy to buy yourself out of having any equipment in a pinch. Something you also need to remember is just because you have the potions doesn't mean you'll be able to use them in time. If you get wombo combo to take too much damage just once, just like everything, balance is key. On top of that, you need to be careful of what each level is going to pull on you. The human region is pretty normal, nothing too crazy, but by the Earth region you're going to have to deal with poison in high quantities and the first few bits of truly labyrinthian level design. The Fire World seemed one-track minded to hurt you constantly with enemies and some truly bullshit attacks and constant hazards. You think you get a break with the Water World only to learn that all of the water is acid. Acid chews through equipment like a very hungry light-like, which is one of the only instances I can recommend skinny dipping in sulfuric acid comparable to going in clothes. The Illusion World has, nothing, as far as I can tell aside from a few wall teleports, and the Monster World has invisible enemies and so on and so forth. Now to get to technical problems, boy howdy does this game have them. Mostly little things, constant clipping, occasional slowdown, stuff you'd expect in a PS1 first-person game, especially one this big. No, the problems I have are a little bit bigger than that. First off, enemies are easily able to attack you from out of sight. This is annoying, but understandable when it's through a blanket of fog, not so understandable when it's through doors, including locked doors no less. Meaning enemies with range attacks are able to wail on you before you're even able to get through to retaliate. And my second major problem may have been emulator specific, but I had no less than 3 crashes throughout the entire run. And while it did make me redo about 30 minutes of gameplay, one of these crashes was worth it for this. Still, crashing in a game with limited savings is one of the most soul-crushing things you can feel. But that is not the most major fuck-up of the game. Somehow From Software managed to screw up one of their most fundamental pillars. The story is a complete nothing burger with extra cheese. So if the intro confused you on what the hell was going on, the manual goes on to explain that this is the world of Eclipse. In the holy country of Zeptar, a king ruled with an iron fist using a crown that seemed to give him unlimited power. Well, darkness came and apparently swallowed the entire kingdom. We play as Roose Hardy, a mercenary who stopped by the kingdom to find a kindly old woman who helped him some old years back, only to find the entire kingdom missing. A monk tells Roose that if he can get his hands on the evil crown of the king, he can restore everyone back to life. Once that's done, however, I have no idea what happens lore-wise. There's 2 threats to follow. A strange rat creature who continues to constantly help you throughout the entire tower, and the demoness Aria who claims to hate humans, but because she was at a spot of bother at the beginning of the game and you help her, she becomes an on-again, off-again ally. Aside from that, there seems to be a bunch of random things that happen. You have to kill 6 guardians to continue down the tower, and as you do, you learn conflicting information. For example, at one point you find a man holding a boulder so his king could pass through. He then immediately dies. That was a stupid ass sacrifice. No mention of this king is ever made again, unless it's this guy? You also learn that somehow this tower belongs to Belial. You know, the demon. Belial never appears in this fucking game. At one point, Ariel tells you two will have to kill each other. She then only shows up in a secret area after this and never bothers you again. A lot of the NPCs seem to think you're here after the crown for power reasons, not to save everyone. But for once, they might be right. Because when you reach the final bosses, kill them all, and get the ending cutscene, you get this strange sequence where Roose, exhausted from his adventures, nearly dies of it before he realizes the crown is right in front of him. And then he becomes the brand new evil king. That's a fucking ball punch and a half. I looked it up. There's no other ending, just a non sequitur of a downer ending. Also, so much goes unanswered. Who the hell was the monk? Why did Ariel say you're going to fight them? Fuck off back to the Aether. Did you save the town as you promised yourself? Who was that rat that was helping you the whole time? Was this all a setup? There's so many damn questions and you never get any answers as far as I know in this game. Once you swing back to the main menu, you can unlock a sort of New Game Plus mode where you place back at the very tippy top of the tower and can run through to grab whatever you missed and kill every enemy. Which means yes, you can do a genocide run of Shadow Tower. Shadow Tail. So here we are, 10 pages deep, half a dozen ramblings, and I still don't know what to make of this game. It's not 1 step forward and 2 steps back, or it's not 2 steps forward and 1 step back like most games. Instead, it seemed content to do-si-do all over the fucking line back and forth like it's dancing to a jamboree. For everything that I liked in Shadow Tower, I was left scratching my head. For everything that was a good idea, often the execution left a lot to be desired. On the whole, Shadow Tower is a good game. Hell, it's a great game. Why not? It's about on par with the rest of the Kingsfield series, and while we're getting ever so closer and closer to the Souls-like formula we all know and love, but it's just a game that's an ever-changing mystery to me. I can't tell if I love it or just like it, and this is possibly my first ever FromSoft game. Man, it was a baptism by fire. Would I recommend Shadow Tower? Why not, so long as you're a fan of the previous games, and this time I'll even extend it to survival horror fans. But if not, I'd say skip. What? There's a fighting game mode?